You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Perth Property Show. My name's Trent Fleskens, your host as always. And this week we are going left field today. It's a very interesting and enjoyable podcast I'm looking forward to sharing with you today. One that we've really never covered before. We've spoken to ministers, we've spoken to managing directors of billion-dollar companies, number one real estate agents in most of the suburbs in Perth, lawyers, tax agents, interior designers, but we have never spoken to someone on the ground right now who represents tens of thousands of people, and that is represented in her following on social media, of someone literally trying to figure out how to buy a house right now, and that is Brooke from Brooke Moves, the YouTube channel, the Instagram channel, the TikTok channel, and I'm really grateful to have your time today, Brooke. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for the invite, Trent. It's a real hoot to be here, and hopefully you don't ask me too many tricky questions, so I'm certainly no lawyer.
That is the point of today's episode. It is to get back to basics and try and figure out whether the answers to my Q&A sessions might be making a difference, whether any of the work we're doing on this podcast and the work being done in government is making any of a difference, and what could be done. But also, more importantly, just to get a real deep understanding of what the reality is like for someone who isn't the property profession, doesn't have that leg up in knowledge or experience or connections or even money or any of those things, and it's just a normal person who works a job of anything outside of property, to be honest, which we can get stuck in our silo, right? I want to hear it be straight up today from someone that, having watched your videos on YouTube and found them quite entertaining, if not very concerning, what's going on the ground. So again, thanks for your time. And first thing I wanted to ask you was, can you share a bit of your background? Who are you? What do you do for a day job? And what do you know about property these learned?
I know a little bit more now than I did a year ago when we started the channel, but I guess my backstory is I actually grew up in WA, grew up down south in Dardanup, rode horses my whole childhood, did uni in Perth, and then actually moved to Sydney, and I was over in Sydney for 7 years. And I decided to move back to WA early last year, moved back in with my parents.
And why did you make that move?
A lot of reasons, personal reasons, but also I really saw myself trying to work really hard, really turning up the dial on trying to enter the property market. And I was financially getting absolutely nowhere in Sydney. Yeah,
it seems like that's the common story there, is that it's very expensive. Wages are actually less than in Perth statistically. I don't know if you knew that, Brooke. But also property is twice as expensive.
Oh, I was paying, I think, $450 a week in rent in a share house in Maroubra, which is not a super central suburb. It's just in the inner east. Anyway, I was paying a lot of rent in this share house. I was sharing a house with 4 other people and really getting nowhere financially. My career, I had managed to climb up as high as I possibly could and desired to. I was earning over 100 grand in a spot that I would have thought 5 years prior, wow, that would be amazing if I got there. And still financially, really not doing well. My main hobby is also triathlon, which is an expensive sport, but you've got to have your hobbies. But yeah, just what I was spending was not getting me anywhere living in Sydney.
So
I was going
Perth
backwards.
Was a logical, rational, practical choice to come back to the family, but also maybe a place where you could get ahead.
Totally. And I was also over people, like Sydney people,
the Sydney
as well.
wank.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to get out of here. I feel like I've done my time. So moved back over to WA, and I thought I'll move back in with mum and dad, Leanne and Terry, for a short while. I'll get my savings up, and then I'll hit the ground. Surely I'll be able to buy something pretty swiftly. I was really saving probably 95% of my income. I was really spending basically nothing, just a few groceries here and there and the gym membership.
Which is great, being able to live at home.
It was awesome, but I was also deeply traumatised moving back in with your friggin' boomer
I think
parents.
we all are. I took a 6-month period as well in my mid-20s,
Yep.
and that was enough.
You know what it's like then.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It was the same for my parents as well. They're retired. They're trying to nestle into this gorgeous lifestyle that they've earned. And then they've got Brooke barging back through the doors, who's making a racket and getting up at 4 a.m. and just carrying on like a absolute hooligan. And I was also working from home as well. So I was there all the time.
Doing what?
Okay, so my background is in journalism. That is what I have a degree in. And yeah, I've been a journalist for the past 10 years or so, probably a solid decade.
Mainstream stuff like TV, newspaper.
online news.
Yep.
So my most recent job was at news.com.au. That's the biggest news website in the country, so most people would know it. And so I ended up as homepage editor there. So that's the job I was doing once I moved back to WA.
Headlines.
Yeah, headlines, all that, you name it.
A lot of Donald Trump, clearly.
A lot of the very naughty boys.
Yeah.
A lot of big naughty boys doing naughty things.
Scandal.
Yeah.
And so when you started looking for property, was that the same time where you thought, hey, let me document this and start Brooke Moves on YouTube? Or you go a couple of months in and go, hang on, this is a story here, this is fucked?
Yeah, I think I actually cracked the shits once with my parents, and they were actually heading off on a little holiday, and I just said to myself, by the time they get back, I will have moved out and I'll be living my own life and this nightmare will be over. Love my parents. The relationship was getting a little strained. And so at that time, I was almost every single day heading all over Perth and to anywhere that I could possibly afford, essentially at that time, and finding very quickly I was not able to really afford anything, and also the options available to me were disgusting.
So where's your parents' house?
Singleton, down Mandurah Way.
Yep. That where you were first looking. Most people, I think the stat is 95% of people end up living within 5Ks where they grew up. So were you looking around Mandurah, Falcon, Golden Bay, Secret Harbour, anything along that coast between Mandurah and Rockingham, or were you anywhere north of the river? What was the scope early days?
I did not even at that point put a limit on where I was willing to look because I work remotely, so being central to Perth wasn't an issue for me at the time. And so, yeah, I was looking local to that area, further south as well, but also north of the city, around Fremantle, Hamilton Hill as well, a lot around that Rockingham Road region.
Yep.
And at that point, it was pretty much just apartments and little units that I was inspecting and finding that they were really disgusting, really stinky in a lot of instances, and also really crazy strata, like strata of $1,000 plus per quarter. And I was like, I don't really want to, and nothing on offer as well for the strata cost. Like, you would think for that amount you would have a pool or a gym, but I think the flashiest thing it had was a electric gate at the front.
Great.
I was like, what are we paying for here? Anyway, so I was going out and not having a good time, and obviously my parents were due home, and my goal of moving out by the time they got back was slipping out of my fingers. And I had just started seeing my hot boyfriend, who's a cameraman, and for months and months, as I continued inspecting places, I was having the same experience over and over again. And regretfully, I didn't pull the trigger on anything I inspected during that time, which I now, about 12 months later, I really regret, because the scenes back then don't even compare to what I'm going through now.
Call that non-buyer's remorse. This paralysis nearly of looking back on what it could have been and going, well, there's no value in it now, therefore I can't pull the trigger now because I'm lamenting what it was a year ago.
Honestly, I've had many a sleepless night over past Brooke being very silly. But at the time, for me, I was like, this is a whole new world for me. I had never really seriously considered buying something because I thought I'll get myself really well set up and I'll be able to achieve it.
Yeah, and you want to get data as well. You don't want to just go and buy the first thing, especially if it's saying you go into the stock market, you don't just pick one and run. You want to try and learn what it is you're about to buy.
I was testing it out and I was seeing what I liked, didn't like, and I was meeting a lot of agents. Some agents I didn't even want to deal with, even if it was a nice place, because I'm like, well, you're awful. A lot of times there was like blatant sexism being thrown at me. I would take my partner with me to these inspections and I'm buying completely independently of him. The agents will refuse to look at me. And I'm like, I'm the one with the money. I don't have much of it, but I'm still the one that's considering buying something.
Yeah, it's my signature.
You should, yeah, exactly. I'm asking questions and they're replying to my partner. And I thought, I don't even want to deal with you, even if I do want this place. So yeah, I guess circling back was going out, having this same experience over and over again, and we just thought, well, let's just start documenting it. And through my own peers, my own connections, people in the same age group as me, we're all complaining and whinging about the exact same thing. I already knew other people could relate to the same struggle that I was having. And we thought, we're both absolute media experts. Let's bloody make something of it.
Well, that's that thing, right? This place is a shrine for property experts, but you're a media expert, and this is where it's clearly shown through. You've created some great content, and you've clearly touched a nerve with a lot of people in a similar situation to you. Can I ask, how old were you when you started it?
I'm 32 now. I was 31 last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were 31, and what did you have saved at the time planning to put towards the house?
I feel like did something quite impressive. In about 6 months of staying at my parents' house, I saved 20 grand.
Yep.
And for me at that time, I felt even if I did have to loan a little bit extra to just get over the line, if I found something I really loved, I could probably realistically get my foot in the door, especially if it's an apartment. And at that time, the places I was viewing were probably high 300s to mid 400s, which now I think, oh my God, that wouldn't exist nowadays.
What was the plan when you think about your deposit and you think about your income should have been enough, to be frank, when you think about the serviceability of that extra 380 grand you might have needed to loan at the time? Were you thinking a 95% loan through Keystart or the federal government scheme at the time? What was the plan from a finance perspective? Had you spoken to a broker? Where were you at that point?
Yeah, so I was thinking I would go down the first home buyer scheme through the government. And I did have a broker who had helped a huge amount of people in my immediate network who I trusted. And he had, I think for a while I was actually pre-approved. And so really ready to go, really ready to take it seriously. And like you said, feeling quite confident that my income and my work history and propensity to service a loan was pretty much on target. I felt like for anyone in a situation that I was in, I should be able to probably go out and without too much trouble be able to buy something. How delusional I was.
And but the point I guess we're making here is you hadn't even gotten to the opportunity yet of crossing that path of getting the property settled. You actually are still battling to get a contract signed from a seller from your office. It's been 12 months now.
Yep.
How many properties do you reckon you've viewed in this time?
Oh, I reckon dozens, to be honest. I haven't really kept count, but yeah, dozens. I think... Yeah, at one point I was viewing 3 or 4 every week, and now I go and see at least 1 or 2 a week. Maths is clearly not my strength, but definitely
you're close to 100.
Yeah.
Okay, and the property prices have gone from high 300s for the same thing to, I assume, high 400s, 500?
Oh, 600s. Something that I could have bought for 400 is now easily 600 plus. And not only that, but you've got another 20, 30 people in the room with you, all squishing down this tiny little hallway, trying to get a glimpse of this, let's be frank, shitbox. It's tiny. You're dealing with 60 square metres of internal living space in a tiny little thing they've tried to pass off as a courtyard. So not only is the price extreme, but you're contending with dozens of other people who are as desperate, if not more desperate than you. And a lot of investors or flippers, especially when I go to houses that need to basically be bulldozed and built again, I can't compete with flippers, savvy investors. Like
They've been there before.
Yeah, and I don't have the extra funding to put 100 grand into a house on top of what I would already pay for the cost of it.
So that property's gone up, let's say $200,000. How much has your savings gone up in that time?
This is where I've really suffered several knockbacks because my dog, as some of my followers would know, broke his leg. Very expensive. I've spent easily a house deposit on trying to fix my dog's leg.
Okay.
So that's been several surgeries in the past 6 months. Yeah. So I'm not doing well financially. I'm actually worse off now than I was when I started. And yeah, so I'm also dealing with that. But the positive thing is my parents, Leanne and Terry, I managed to actually convince them to help me out.
There you go. And that was going to be my next question is, it sounds like from my first post-mortem on this, or pre-mortem, on where you're at, right, is as the market keeps moving, the requirement, and this is the whole chasing your tail situation for young people as the market moves, especially as this 5% scheme has come in, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on how that's impacted the market from your perspective in the last couple of months. It has really just exemplified the need for further deposits, which are over and above what young people on normal salaries can save in a certain period of time. The average is $12,000 a year. I don't know if you know that, Brooke, but the average savings for people about the age of 30 is $12,000 a year. And that is a fraction of the growth in deposit requirements needed every year since COVID. So everyone's just falling backwards. What's happened in Perth is the wealth gap is not really an income gap. It's a haves and have-nots of property to the point where people are now making more money with their property. And I suggest you would have 200 grand last year if you'd bought a year ago than what your income would have been.
Bring that up again. No. I did put my first offer in on a house about almost a month ago now.
Yes.
That was pretty exciting for me. And I obviously got rejected.
How was the process, though? What have you learned in that process?
I learned, oh God, here's the thing that I want to pick your brains on as well. So the property that I went and inspected, it was listed from 449,000.
Okay.
So 450 grand.
What was the property?
It was a 3x1 on a 800 square metre block in Singleton, so really close to my parents.
Right.
My brother lives around the corner, and it's also walking distance to the beach. Beautiful spot. House full of asbestos. Rank. But to a standard that you could potentially live in and do it up.
So the old workers' cottage, essentially. Beach shack, maybe.
Beach shack. And it had this beautiful, like, outdoor courtyard entertaining area. Anyway, I had my
You put an offer in, clearly.
had my heart set on it. And I offered 500 grand.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm being quite savvy and quite clever here, but obviously not clever and savvy enough because I missed out and it ended up selling for 570 grand.
Jesus. So I'm assuming your question is, what should I expect to offer more than the from price? That's unreasonably high. And some would suggest that's actually price baiting. So there are laws against this with real estate agents. You can't set it at a price that it's clearly not going to sell for.
Wow.
There's a whole mantra in real estate. It's called price it low, watch it grow. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I haven't. But here's the thing that I think is, to me, screaming corruption, scam, something fishy is going on. Every place that's now listed on real estate or domain, whatever, agents now seem to be putting from X amount of thousands of dollars. Does that excuse them from these laws that you're talking about?
No, it doesn't. So that is the whole point. There are laws around the country in different states where Queensland, for example, has it where they have to be essentially pegging it at a price that is realistic and within a certain percentage of what it definitely would sell for. And so it is essentially called price baiting. And in this market, there's enough data around where agents should have quite a good understanding of at least the 100,000 that it's going to go for. If it's going to be at 570, at least let's put it at from 499 or from 500. And that's a pretty extreme case.
Yeah, so what is that cap that agents can't list if it sells for...
In WA, I don't believe we have those laws.
Oh, that's the scam I'm talking about. Because everyone's doing it. Because it's just... And the agents go, you just got to put your best offer forward. And so I'm sick of hearing it. Can you just tell me what the price is? And maybe I'll give you a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's impossible to know.
It's
very stressful.
And that's where the benefit of a buyer's agent, for example, which I know is tough when you've got savings that are minimal. But if you're lucky enough to have parents who can help you out, it could be your savings that go towards paying for a buyer's agent and their guarantee that puts your deposit up, for example. But in markets like this, and it wouldn't have been my advice 2 or 3 years ago, but now when you're at that point where you're losing hope, you're stressed and exhausted about continually being in this situation, what you often need to be looking for is left field ins and competitive advantages. And that is the benefit of a buyer's agent. I'm not pushing it for any point other than it will help to solve the problem you're facing right now, which is essentially being discriminated against. I wouldn't suggest it would be really because you're a female. It's because you're a first home buyer. And when you're talking to real estate agents, they can sniff straight away, are you a minute risk of not settling on this property because I can't be bothered having to sell this again. And if you can't give them 100% confidence that you are a cash buyer or you are prepared to go cash unconditional with your pre-approval, and especially that you've got an up-to-date pre-approval that you can give them, you're not going to get a look in. And if you don't sound like this is your third or fourth property and this is just run-of-the-mill and I'm an investor, you're not going to get a look in. And even then, when you do get a look in on those properties that are in the price point below $600,000, you'll still be in this auction anyway between 4 or 5 of those people who are at the top of the pile.
Yeah, so I guess here's my next question. What do I do? Do I throw an extra 100, 200 grand at a place that isn't worth that much just to get in and know that I'm going to be essentially scraping by for the next 30 years just to survive?
Yep.
Do I wait it out? What do you do? Would you personally, in my same situation, go and throw an extra couple of $100,000 at something just to get in, knowing that, like, the next 30 years, you're going to be paying the price, literally?
Definitely not. I wouldn't be in a situation where I'm believing I'm spending an extra 30 or 40% on the property than what I think it's worth. But I think it's really important to know a few things. One, be extremely informed. So you should know already where you think best case that property is going to sell for based on other data in the area. So I would hope to think that you'd know that when that lists from 449, you're going, this is definitely going in the 500s, and it actually could be going in the high 500s based on the last 3 properties I saw and what the price I can see it from online information. Secondly, my advice would be, this is one thing that you're clearly very good at, is building relationships. You have a beautiful personality that people would find enamoring, right? It's why people watch you. It's why people follow you, because you're clearly likable. And real estate agents, as much as there's a lot of slugs out there, there's a lot of really nice real estate agents through that are like it for the people side. And whilst your strength might not be your financial acumen or your financial backing, it's clearly your personality. And advice that only a couple of episodes ago Redmond Howe, who's one of the top agents in the northern suburbs of Perth, gave was, if you're struggling to break through from a financial side, break through from a qualitative personal side. Follow real estate agents, become their friends, and essentially be that lovable pest where they actually want to back you in. They find a property and go, oh, fuck, Brooke, I love this. And they call you because they want to help. And there are a lot of agents out there actually do want to help.
Yeah.
And even to the point of having a letter prepared of, hey, this is who I am, this is what I've been going through, I've looked at this many properties, it would mean the world to me. People are sending personal letters now with their offers, and this is from agents telling me this, to try and just have some edge, because maybe there's 3 offers that are all at 570 grand. There are a lot of owners out there who actually aren't 100% money greedy. They do want to see someone benefit and live a lovely life here. What I want to do, I would love to renovate this house.
Yeah, well,
I'm not going to knock it down.
Anyone listening at the moment who falls into that category, please contact me,
There you
because
go.
I haven't come across any of them like that just yet.
It's a real shame, because I do know many of them in
Well, send
terms
them
of,
my way. What are you doing?
of agents who are just great people who really want to help. And I can understand there are slugs out there. So that would be the first. But one thing that is red flagging on me is I really need you to be really set with your finance side. Make sure you have a pre-approval, a formal approval printed out that says, I can afford up to this amount. And you're handing them out like resume flyers to every agent you've got. And they don't need to know you're a first home buyer as well. You've clearly been through TV school and news school and all that. Why can't you be Brooke the renovator yourself? Why can't you go in there and go about going, yeah, I'll be doing this. Hey, agent, yeah, just looking to pick this one up. What's your background? Yeah, just investor looking to get through and do a flip on this one.
Yep.
Oh, what else have you got? Oh, a few other properties around town. They don't need to know. If you feel like you're being discriminated against from that perspective, there is nothing wrong with putting your own facade
if you like.
and some white lies. Just at the end of the day, the truth is your approval.
Yeah.
The truth is that you will settle on time. Everything else, other than your name and your identification, is of no business, to be frank, to the agent. But if you feel like you're being discriminated against, take that away from the table. And you've seen enough of these people, be them. Rock up with confidence and essentially instill that confidence in the agent that if you put an offer in, your money is as good, if not better, than anyone else's. Because that's what their job is. Their actual job, their fiduciary duty, is to represent the seller and make sure that if they present an offer, that offer will settle on time.
Yeah.
If they don't, they've not done their job, which is what's so frustrating from a buyer's perspective, because you feel like you're being discriminated against. Their job's actually to discriminate against you if they don't believe you're the strongest offer.
Yeah. That doesn't really solve my question, though.
Hit me.
Am I overpaying by 200,000?
Okay, no. The answer is no.
Because everything is overpriced at the moment. Should I chill out for a bit?
Definitely
give
not.
it 6 months. But I'm getting contradictory advice, like from everyone, saying, quick, pick up anything you can now to get in ASAP.
And who's giving you advice to chill out?
And then other people are like, market's going to crash, Brookie.
Yeah,
Get
those
in
are the
time.
same people who have been saying that for the last 7 years, and those are the people who have missed out.
Yeah, but they also, like, people, they say the same thing about the other side, which is obviously the side that you come from. You know what I mean? And both sides present a very strong argument. And as I'm not an expert, and everyone sounds right to me,
Well,
so
what,
I'm like,
what I would
what the
suggest
hell?
is, if you take away the financial aspect of this for a second, what you're actually trying to buy is your home. It's a basic need.
Yeah.
It's just like food. They will get to a point where money isn't actually the main object here. It's sustenance. It's shelter. It's friendship. All these things that are real basics that we need as humans in the 21st century. This housing side, yes, you want to make sure you're not overpaying and putting yourself in a position that you can't afford to pay the mortgage in the future. But what you do want to understand is that the market is moving so fast because we have currently the lowest stock on market in recorded history, sustained demand from record immigration on a yearly basis, and we're not building the houses we need to. Last year we had 75,000 new people come into this state. They need about 30,000 homes. We built 21. The year before that we had 90,000 people come into the state. They need 40,000 homes. We built 16. So you add that deficit up every year. That's what's created the situation in both the rental market, where there's only 1,100 properties on the market to rent out of a population of 3 million, where there's only 2,900 properties to buy, because of those factors of demand and supply. And we're so far from being close to balanced, let alone in a risky position of negative growth, that the concern shouldn't be, am I overpaying for this? The concern should be, every month that I'm not buying this at what the value is, I am therefore falling behind another 1-2%. And that's your opportunity cost, is actually, as I said before, you've lost 200 grand already not buying now. That's more of a risk that lasts 12 months versus, well, could the house be worth 400 again in 2 years?
That's another factor that's interesting, because some people that did buy 5 years ago now are like, oh, our house price has doubled since then. And they act like they're some sort of
savant.
They act like they're some sort of fortune teller. And to me, I go,
it was dumb luck
you
for a lot of
didn't
people.
freaking know that. You're not an expert. That was sheer, good fortune. I'm out there. I've got my full-time job. I'm doing 3 bloody side hustles, shopping at Aldi, spending $0, and I'm still struggling to get ahead the way I did it. And I say, even people now who are like, get in now, every second you're not in, you're wasting time, you're losing money. No one, once again, knows what's going to happen in the next 5 years.
Of course.
There might be a crash. There might be a boom. No one knows.
So the way I would frame that perspective is to go back to why you're buying. Are you buying this to make you money?
I wouldn't mind it.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to make a bad choice for my future.
Yep, no, I agree.
I don't want to lose money.
Now, if you bought a property for $500,000 tomorrow, and in 2 years' time, the book value of that property was $450,000 because the mining industry tanked, something blew up on the other side of the world, and the world stopped running in the same way the GFC occurred, would that lead you to sell the property and bank a loss at that point in time if it was worth 10% less?
Be resentful. I shouldn't have bought at the peak of the freaking market.
So what I can give you as an example is an investment property that I developed on 900 square metres in Thornley. I was 24 years old. I turned that old shack into 3 4x2s, and at the time I had done my feasibility. I thought I was going to make $200,000 doing this development, and the units would all be worth about $450,000 each. By the time I'd finished the development, it was February 2016. And so I'd bought at the peak of the market, and essentially by the time I was looking at what the book value was, it was crashing. And we know that time. So on paper, actually, I'd done all that work, and the properties were all worth now about 380 grand. I was actually a little bit down on my money after all that work. Now, I had 2 choices there. Hold, rent those properties out and just have them rent for essentially paying off my mortgage, or sell and bank a loss. Obviously, I didn't sell and bank the loss. I went on a holiday for 1.5 years, as I planned anyway. The rent paid for the mortgage, and until you sell, you don't make the loss. Those properties now are all worth over $850,000. Now, that a lot was, as you said, just dumb luck in the market, just sitting in the market. But that's a very basic hold strategy. And the point is, we don't buy a property for 1 or 2 years. We certainly don't buy our family home for 1 or 2 years. We buy it for 20, 30 years, which experiences down cycles and up cycles. You don't make a loss until you sell. You don't make a win until you sell. And so to be sitting and procrastinating in fear about what if the book value goes down because I don't know what the future looks like, that's actually been the thing that's held you back from what the possible opportunities could have been when you were looking a year ago. And I don't forsake you for not buying back then, because everyone needs to take their time to make a call.
Yeah.
But what it's obviously led to now is you're facing problems that are actually way outside your control. It's just the broader market and being discriminated against as a first home buyer and not having the strongest offer. And those things are things that are just horrible, that have nothing to do with you, to be honest. It's more the market.
I guess a lot of people will say, start small, start really far out, and gradually you can slowly work your way up, and you can eventually end up somewhere that you're happy with.
Yeah.
And I think in theory and in practice for people 30 years ago or less amount of time ago, that worked an absolute treat. But for me now, if I go and buy something out in the absolute dregs of Armidale, for example, obviously there's lovely parts of Armidale, but places I can afford are way out the back of Armidale. Those places are now priced at like...
You're in the 600s at least there now.
Oh, man, more 800, 850. Like, total shitbox gross places are 700s, 800s. That place, if that place depreciates and then limits my capacity to have that slow progression that a lot of people think is the only way to get into a nice place, that leaves me worse off, and I'm still stuck in the absolute pits of Armidale.
That is a risk, because when you think about the financial outcome of your home, there is still financial outcomes what you're buying. The basic advice is try and buy into an area where the median income is higher than yours, if you can, so that you aren't being left with a saturation risk of low socioeconomic situations, especially when the market downturns. That's where all the mortgagee and possession risk goes. That's where forced sales happen, and that's where you actually see median house prices drop, because people have to sell, and when you sell, you make a loss, right? Whereas you see other suburbs, a good example, Wembley Downs, massively high percentage of owner-occupiers there. Even when the market downturned, no one sold because no one had to, because they're all owner-occupied, mainly didn't have any mortgages, and so you didn't actually see anyone banking a loss. So the median house price didn't actually go down on paper. Now, I know that's a suburb that is out of most people's reach, but it talks to and validates your point of, I don't just want to go and buy in any crappy suburb in any crappy area. I do at least want to have an area that I'll enjoy, that I'll feel safe in, and that would have some potential of growing in value based on its amenity. And so my advice would be to stick where you're from, Singleton. You understand that area. It is one of the lowest priced areas, but it's not one of the lowest socio-economic areas and demographic areas. It just happens to be cheaper based on housing stock and housing quality and those sort of things. You should be able to be confident about what you're buying there. You should know the streets.
I can't afford there though, Trent. That's my issue.
So the reality is it's past you, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because places like my brother bought a place just up the road in Golden Bay just before this massive boom. He bought his place with his partner for $400,000.
Yep.
It's worth double that now, and I can't afford that.
So have you thought about the strategy of rent vesting?
Yes, but I'm a first home buyer.
If you're going to be going guarantor with your parents, for example...
They cannot, because they went guarantor for my brother.
So how are they planning to help you?
Giving me some money.
Oh, giving you cash.
Yeah.
Okay. So would they be able to give you enough cash there to cover a deposit and some stamp duty?
Not enough to be able to afford in that area.
Okay, sure. All right. That would have been my next side of things, is to go look from an income perspective.
I'm like a
rental income.
You know, I'm like a hamster on a wheel. I've gone personally around and around in circles 1,000 billion times myself, and I wanted to just say, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. So earlier when you were talking about, I was like, if I start out there, I'm never even going to make it in close into an ideal place, and you were like, when the market downturns, those people are going to be fine. Those people will be worse off. Why don't I sit out until the market downturns? Because it seems like it's an inevitability almost.
What goes up generally comes down, right? What in cycles is that when the downturn occurs, the downturn never goes lower than the last upturn, if that makes sense. If the market goes from, say, 600 to 500 and then up to 900, the next downturn probably goes to 800. Right? And so there is always risk that you will have downturns for short-term investment periods, but over the medium to long term, it's impossible to pick the perfect time in a cycle. And that stasis, that paralysis of trying to pick the cycle is often the thing that makes you miss out on most of the upside in the first place. The reality is, though, for you to sit out and wait for the downturn, the market is in such a hot position now where you're most likely going to experience another 20-30% of growth before a downturn even is possible, based on how critically knackered the undersupply is right now. And this is a global shock, which can happen at any point in a local cycle. There'll be a lot of upturn suffering for you before any downturn will happen.
Yeah. I guess the reality that I'm forced to be faced with is I practically cannot afford to buy in the current market that we're in. And you mentioned the 5% deposit earlier.
Yeah, how has that impacted you on the ground?
Instantly, the second that kicked in, I looked online the following day, nothing in my price range. I inspect stuff for the fun of it, and we film, obviously, so it's great content. But practically, I'm not thinking, my headspace is I cannot afford anything in this current market. And I can't just invent money, unfortunately. And even, like I said, I don't feel comfortable spending $200,000 over what a listed price is, or for a house that's simply not worth it. that's the situation I'm in currently. It's totally destroyed.
So have you got an idea of what your max purchase price would be right now?
Yeah, it would be probably 500 still, yeah.
$500,000.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go straight into realestate.com.
Yeah, but I don't want to pay. But if I'm buying an apartment, which I'm open to, I've got 2 dogs, one small, one big. And I also do not feel comfortable paying $1,000 per quarter on strata.
Okay. So it can't be strata? Or if it is, it can't have strata fees? It can be
strata, but it just can't be ridiculous.
Okay. So probably not strata, but survey strata is probably one where you've got, in a triple X or something like that would be lovely, I assume.
Yeah, anything that's not taking the absolute piss.
So what I've plugged in here is a minimum of 2 bedrooms, under $500,000 in the greater Perth region. It is quite stark. Now, that's 259 properties. When I untick properties that are under contract, that comes down to 83 properties in Perth. And it does tell a good story, to be honest, about...
Do they all say from something?
Yes, offers from $499.
And they're not selling for that
$495.
either. They're selling for $700 up or $600 up. They're not... that just because they're listed, as we know, it would be a waste of time even going and inspecting.
And this is why I wanted to have you on, Brooke, was to bring my head back into the weeds and get a really stark reality of what's going on for people looking to make it really at the entry-level price and what's happening. And what the reality is, there are 83 properties on the market right now that are under $500,000, which, as you just said, pretty much will go over $500,000 that have 2 bedrooms or more. And so it does make it hard. But my advice would be, this is where you fish, essentially. But stay in this spot. It's obviously where you can in the first place. And then focus on building out those qualitative strengths of not being the first home buyer, not being unprepared without your formal approval, and then building relationships with agents so that they actually essentially just put you first in line for something that's coming up. Have you ever looked on Rewa for number 1 sales agents in certain areas?
No.
So a good way of knowing who the most prolific agents, the ones who will have the most properties that you might be interested in, is to look on those lists, because then you'll see this person sold 160 properties this year. They're probably a good person in terms of time benefit who I should be making a relationship with, rather than the person who sells maybe 5 properties in a year.
Would be the less busy people that are going to give me more time.
Yes, that's a good point. They've got more time for you, but they have far less opportunity to actually solve your problem.
Yeah.
There are agents, for example, that are selling 3 or 4 properties every single weekend. To make the lovable pest go away, they'll allocate you one, essentially. And that's what happens with these top agents. They essentially just become allocation agents. They decide who they put up and who gets their life changed this weekend. And so if it's not going to be a financial side, that's your strength, make it your personality. That's the advice we got 2 weeks ago on this podcast, actually.
Oh, great.
Trying to generally just think outside the box a little bit on what the reality is right now is a totally knackered market.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that, Trent.
I know it's probably not the silver bullet. It's definitely not the silver bullet.
I don't think one exists.
Yeah, one doesn't exist. That's the point. But that was the point of this episode, was to really highlight that reality on the ground. Thanks so much for coming in, Brooke. And I'll remind everyone, a bit of a plug, Brooko Moves on YouTube. It's really quite entertaining, but more importantly, quite real and raw about the reality on the ground for people. If you're the Minister for Housing right now, John Kerry, have a look at this and get an understanding of what's going on. If you're a property developer who's feeling a little bit generous this weekend, maybe get in touch with Brooke and see if you can help solve her problems. She does represent the reality for tens of thousands of people in this state. And for all those people out there listening and in that situation, keep your head up. Try and figure out a way to make one of those pieces of advice a silver bullet. And please let me know if it does help, and if you do figure it out one day. And Brooke, please do let us know when you do actually find that property, because I have confidence you will.
Oh, I appreciate that, Trent. You'll be top of my list of who to brag to when I finally buy something.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!